night at the Shelby County Reporter. We're in the final week of the regular season, week 10 here. Davis Potter, sports intern, Wesley Holman, sports editor. First, we're going to take a look back at last week's game of the week, and we saw Spain Park traveling to Thompson and Alabaster. Spain Park continued the momentum they've had the last couple of weeks. He picked up a really big win over Thompson to close out their Region 6 schedule. What were your thoughts of that game, Davis?
Yeah, really, just, the story just continues for the Jaguars. We've talked, really harped on just what all they've been through with all the off-the-field distractions. And, that win over Thompson is their third in a row, going back to that upset win over Vestavia they had a few weeks ago. And I guess for any coach, what they really want to see is, their team playing well towards the end of the year. That's what any coach wants out of their team, where you want to be playing well towards the end when it counts going into the playoffs. And this team's doing that. And they're playing some of their best ball right now, like we talked about. Thompson did get out to that early lead, but after that it was all Jaguars. Nick Mullins, 4 touchdown passes. One of his favorite receivers, Zach Michaels, 121 yards receiving, had 3 of those touchdowns. Their offense is really clicking right now. And like we talked about, the momentum that they have has been awesome for them. After, getting off to that slow start towards the beginning of the season, now they're playing with a bunch of confidence, playing with a bunch of momentum, like we talked about, when they have to be playing their best going into the playoffs. There may be better teams in our region that have better records, like Briarwood, like Chelsea, but there might not be a better team playing with more confidence than the Jaguars are right now.
Yeah, he certainly looked impressive the last couple of weeks, and there's some teams that limp into the playoffs where they, they win a few games early, and that, clinches a spot, and they kind of struggle down the stretch. Spain Park is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
They didn't look like a playoff team at the beginning of the season, but they really turned it up. The offense is clicking right now. Defense is really strong. Got a couple of injured players back, including Alex Payne on defense. They're looking really good on both offense and defense. Coming into the playoffs with a lot of momentum, so you got to watch out for the Jaguars in the first couple of rounds. In another big game last week, we saw Briarwood hold on late to win their second region championship in a row. You were there, Davis. What were your impression of that game?
Yeah, it really was a back-and-forth contest there. The Aggies from Sylacauga really didn't make anything easy, but you have to be impressed with the Lions and the way they were able to, gut it out there at the end, capping off their second straight undefeated region season. They picked off a pass there at the end of the game to kind of seal it, but this game was won up front with their offensive line. They had 4 different rushers, combined for over 250 yards rushing. Even Ben Kraft, the quarterback, not really known for his run. I think he had somewhere around 80 yards rushing, a couple touchdowns, 2 or 3 touchdowns, and really their offensive line just manhandled that defensive line for the Aggies. Really pushed them off the ball, created open lanes for their rushing attack. But things did, like we talked about, got kind of hairy there at the end. Tanner Cunningham, with a 3-point lead, throws an interception in the end zone, giving new life to Sylacauga. But they hold him off, like we talked about, intercept Sylacauga's quarterback there at the very end to seal the victory for him. Now they're going to go. They have a lot of momentum too, going into the playoffs. And this is a team that has a lot of experience, both on both sides of the ball. Really, that defensive line, has played great all year for the Lions, and that that coupled with that offense, those are really the strengths of this team right now. And they have a lot of momentum heading into the playoffs in the next couple of weeks also.
They certainly do, Davis. I've been impressed with the secondary at Briarwood the last couple of weeks. You mentioned they picked off the pass late to seal the game against Sylacauga. They also played a key role in the comeback a week before against Shelby County, where you had Chad Davis back there. With Cooper Harrington out for the rest of the season, they're going to need people to step up in the last couple of weeks. They've seen that with Chad Davis leading the way as a safety. I've really been impressed with the secondary, and as you mentioned, with the running game, they've got depth there now with having 4 different guys contributing to the running game against Sylacauga. If they can keep it at that level, they're really going to be a dangerous team in the playoffs. After last week's action, we got 6 teams that earned a playoff spot this season. First round of the playoffs begins on November 5th. Let's take a look at the teams that made the playoffs. We've got Spain Park in Class 6A, Briarwood by virtue of the region championship in Class 5A. Chelsea also as runner-up in that region. We've got Calera in Class 4A. Vincent earned a Class 2A playoff spot. And Coosa Valley Academy is still alive in the Alabama Independent Schools Association Class 1A playoffs. A big matchup the first week of the playoffs we've got is Calera traveling to Bibb County. Davis, we saw Calera, clinch that playoff spot late with that win over Childersburg. Now they've got the task of traveling to a team that finished undefeated in its region. Do the Eagles have any chance in this game?
They probably have a chance. They're riding a lot of momentum right now. You talked about Clear. They were kind of on the edge. They didn't know if they would make the playoffs. Had a rough patch there in the middle of the season where he lost a couple games in a row. Now they've won 3 in a row. And, Coach Martin, he couldn't ask for anything more than to get his star quarterback back, Brandon Wells, actually playing quarterback. Wells got hurt, at the beginning of the season, had a wrist and shoulder injuries. They've been kind of keeping him away from injuries, playing him at different positions, kind of on defense and at wide receiver, running it. Played a lot of different places except quarterback. He returned for the Mumford game a couple weeks ago, had 5 touchdowns. Also got a couple more touchdowns in that game last week at Childersburg. So if he, he makes that offense go. He was, our Shelby County cover athlete for our preseason magazine, and there was a reason for that. One of the, better players in the region. So. I think as long as he can, keep that production up and lead that team and lead that offense, I think they'll have a shot against anybody. But like you said, Bibb County, undefeated in their region, that's going to be a tough test. So, not only is Wells and the offense going to have to play well, but that defense is going to have to step it up for the Eagles also.
I think you're right, Davis. Brendan Wells is certainly going to be the key here. They've got him back at quarterback. This is where they thought they would be all season, but due to the injury, they had to move him around a little bit.
Yeah.
He's played well the last 2 weeks. This is his senior year. This is his last shot. Yeah. He's going to be the team leader, so it'll be interesting to see how, he comes out and plays in that playoff game. And as you mentioned, the defense will certainly be important as well against a strong Bibb County offense. It'll be a great game the first week of the playoffs. In our game of the week this week, we're going to turn our attention toward the Alabama Independent Schools Association. We've got Coosa Valley, which is 8-1 right now, and they've earned their playoff spot by winning the region championship. They're hosting an undefeated Crenshaw Christian team who's considered one of the top teams in the AISA this season. Davis, last week we saw Bryce Cook rush for 3 touchdowns. John Bolin played an important role in the passing game. Do you think that the Rebels have a chance to win this week?
Yeah, I think so. And, it's going to be strange to actually see somebody lose this game. You talked about there's only 1 loss combined between the 2 teams. You have Crenshaw undefeated. Coosa Valley, whose only loss of the season came back in week 2 against Kingwood. So this is a heavyweight matchup, really. And Coosa Valley, the Rebels, they're going to have to play well on both sides. Like we talked about, this is a Crenshaw team that's scoring 32 points a game and only giving up 10 points a game throughout the year and have pitched 2 shutouts. So they're pretty stout on the defensive side of the ball. They're going to have to put together a complete effort if they want to come away with the win over Crenshaw and keep their season alive, really.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting game, that's for sure. As you mentioned, only 1 loss between the 2 teams. Coosa Valley, they've really played well down the stretch, and on their way they had some big games to win that region championship that they couldn't afford a loss, or else they might not be region champions. So they played under pressure the last couple of weeks. They really, this week, they can kind of take that pressure off their back. They're in the playoffs coming up a week from now. They've got this one last game against the team they're likely to see again in the playoffs. It'll be a good test for them right here at the end of the season about where they're at heading into the playoffs. I think they've got a chance. It'll be interesting to see how it turns out Friday night. Check back next week for our first playoff edition. I'm Wesley Hallman.
And I'm Davis Potter.
And this has been Game Night at the Shelby County Reporter.